Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritav Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If we look at the last 2 or 3 verses, in fact some verses before that also, 3 words stand out. One is, it appears in 2 of these verses, called Manit. What is Manit? Manasasya Isha. The niyantra of the mind. Second, that struck me when I was reading this, is avyakta. Again, a word which sometimes is very unclear. And the third is that all of them end with jantuhu amritatvam cha gacchati or viduhu amritaha te bhavanti ityadi. In fact, it comes up again more and more. Paramam gatim, etc. These 3 phrases, I think it's a good time to look at. Avyakta is shown as subtler, superior to everything in the Jagat. In a living being, particularly in human beings, Indriyas are said to be wavering, going where they will find Indriya Vishaya. They need to be checked by the mind. Unfortunately, the mind is also not very clear. Mind is in fact vacillating, sankalpa, vikalpa. Therefore, the mind also needs to be checked. And for checking the mind is the buddhi. The buddhi is nichayatmika. And then in all of these verses, it switches to samashti. Buddhi as a highest form of sukshma. And then the samashti idea from the individual to the total. That move, referred to sometimes as Mahan. That samashti sukshma, called Hiranyagarbha, or in any other words you can use to understand that this whole Jagat comes from that samashti sukshma. What is the cause of the samashti sukshma? If that is the cause of the whole Jagat, both the physical form and the intangible form, where did that come from? That is where the word avyakta is used. Literally, avyakta means that which is yet to come. Vyakta is what is already here. Now, if you look at the word avyakta in the context we are trying to understand it, the day as it unfolds for us is avyakta. It is yet to come. What happens in the rest of the day is avyakta, but it is already there in potential form. So avyakta one can think of as that the whole jagat that we know, starting from Brahmaji, Hiranyagarbha, etc., 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 all of them, when they are in their potential form, is avyakta. And this manifests itself in so many ways. Like I said, in the day, as the day progresses, avyakta is becoming vyakta. Expanded, as the whole jagat is today what we see as avyakta, it is not a one-time event. It is happening constantly. It is constantly happening. From my perspective, from a limited perspective, I see this is the beginning, this is the end. This is vyakta, this is avyakta, this is vyakta. But if we take a step back and look at the samashti level, avyakta becoming vyakta is happening constantly. Like I said, in small, small things. Sleep is another good example. Everything becomes avyakta. In sleep, there is no individuality left. The individuality which defines each person. I am an intelligent person. I am an athletic person. I am a knowledgeable person. I am a calm person. This I am, whatever is no more there in sleep. Everything is avyakta. Becomes vyakta again next day. So the word avyakta itself one has to understand. Where does this whole samashti avyakta come from? What is this avyakta? We are looking at the whole jagat and saying this jagat is what I can perceive. And I have defined I as this body mind sense complex operating because of the chaitanyam of the jiva, reflected atma. And we look at this whole jagat and say it's all happening. It's happening to the jagat, it's happening to me, as I have defined myself. This totality of all of this came from one Hiranyagarbha, one Brahmaji. We know by studying Shastra that even that actually goes through a cycle of avyakta vyakta. On Mahapralaya, everything becomes avyakta again. Everything is unmanifest and again manifest. I'm trying to remember one line. So something like in one of the suktas, Surya, Chandra, ityadi, yata dhata akalpayat. As it was, it comes back. That is a big, big avyakta. Why does it come back? Why does the jagat come back? As though come back. Because avyakta is a mula vidya, often called karana sharira, samashti karana sharira. That ajnanam is the very cause of this apparent jagat. Therefore, when the mantra it says, beyond the samashti sukshma is avyakta. The Samishti Sukshma also comes from Avyakta. That is the Karanam. And then Avyaktat Purusha Paraha. Because Avyakta really is the very beginning of Mithya. Sattasadhyam Anirvachaniyam, beginning is Avyakta. We can call it Maya. So one word that recurs again and again, sometimes creates a little uncertainty, is the word Avyakta. Becoming Avyakta is not moksha. It is still part of the cycle. It will become Vyakta. Anything becomes Avyakta will become Vyakta. That is one important thing to understand. Because what is this word that is often used? Paramam gatim, amritatvam gacchati. What is the amritatvam? It is not become Avyakta. We are Avyakta anyway. We seem to see this Jagat and all that happens in the Jagat because of this mistaken notion that we carry with us. So how do we get Amritatvam? All these verses say, Avyaktat Purusha Paraha. That Purusha, the Atma, Brahman, as different from Brahmaji, is the subtlest, is the only thing there that you... No, it is not as if there's a scale and there is, you have Indriya, Manas, Buddhi, Samashti, and then Avyakta, and then there is Brahman. All these are one order of reality, Brahman is another order of reality. So everything becomes as though. So what is this Amritatvam? When the individual jiva, this Karyakaran Sanghata, powered by the jivatvam, understands that this Brahman is there, it is a different order of reality. Nothing else is in the same order of reality. And recognizes that one thing, that Brahman, which is the highest of high, has to be I. There is all this other I are more mistaken notion. So I have to drop this concept of I. That means I have to drop my individuality. There is no individuality. That is the gist of this word that appears, the words appear in 2, 3, 4 verses. Amritatvam gacchati. Or paramam gatim. Parama, the highest form. After that, nothing after that. Purnatvam. So this step from understanding that there is a Purusha which is higher than Avyakta, which is higher than Samashti, everything, which is higher than Buddhi, which is higher in the sense that they are controlling, they are the Karana at each level. And if that is the only Purusha, how can you escape the inevitable that I and that Purusha are the same? There's only one. Logically, I understand this. My buddhi works. That is the place where I'm going to Upalabdhisthana. That's where I'm going to understand this. In the buddhi, I'm going to have to understand this. And in the buddhi, I have to understand that I, as I have understood, I does not exist. In that same buddhi, which is part of the I, Karnikaran Sanghata, I have to understand that the I that I thought I was does not exist. Because I, the one I thought, is also all part of the same structure. What causes all of them. What is the only existing thing? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma has to be I. This last step, which has to take place only in the buddhi, that is the Upalabdhisthanam. We will see in the further verses they talk about this. How do I get there? It's a paradox. I'm saying I have to understand this idea of Ekameva Advitya Brahman. Therefore, that I is Ekameva Advitya Brahman has to be understood in that individual buddhi. That individual buddhi has to reject everything else, including itself. Now, that's not something we do normally in our samsara. So these few verses will talk about the fact that this can be only got through a process of dhyanam, yoga, nididhyasanam. They are all similar sounding words, meditation. But this meditation of nididhyasanam is when the meditator recognizes that what is being meditated upon is the meditator. There is nothing else after that. That is the Paramgatam. So the process, because one of the questions that were raised, if you remember, was if it is not available for any of the senses, how am I going to recognize it? It is alinga. How am I going to recognize it? So this process is being detailed here. How do I get this? So you clearly, before you go here, you've done already 5 Vadlis. And you've done several other Upanishads. All of them tell you the same thing. All of them tell us that you get ready. You prepare the mind. You do a lot of Shravanam and Mananam. And when you are ready, both in terms of understanding and in terms of keeping the buddhi in that state where it can understand. Now, we know that prior to buddhi, we talked about manas, prior to manas, we talked about indriyas, and then, of course, all the kama, karma, etc. will come. Indriya Vishaya. They have to be kept under control. Because they can shake up the buddhi. How can the buddhi remain steady if these are all not kept under control? By shutting off the buddhi, you are not going to gain paramam. It is obviously an illogical notion to say that if you stop all thought, you will get moksha. Moksha is only understanding that Purusha, that Paramam, that Ekameva Advitya Brahman is I. It's an understanding, it's knowledge. How can you get that knowledge if you shut off all thought? Not possible. So that jnanam has to arise. Jnanam, as we've discussed, not in the sense of jnanam that we see in the Jagat, but the very basis, very adhisthana of jnanam, that I am. Tat Tvamasi. And to get that, like I said, there is only one instrument available to us, the buddhi. That is Upalabdhisthanam. This buddhi itself has to be the one which will take charge of the manas, will take charge of the indriyas, which therefore will control all kamadhi. As long as you let the kama arise, Indras will go to the kama. That is their nature. And if they are not checked by the manas, there's no way you're going to get this knowledge in the buddhi. So, even to do nididhyasana, all this has to be done. And the manas, unfortunately, itself is sankalpa vikalpa. Is not, that has to be kept steady, under control. And therefore, the buddhi has to act as the niyantra, controller. It has to act as the isha of the manas. That is called manit. Bhashyakara, in this verse we were doing, talked about it briefly. Manisha manasa sankalpadi rupasya ishte niyantritvene iti manit. One. Anandagiri Tika talks about it a lot. Why that mind becomes, the buddhi becomes so critical? It is Upanabdhi Sthanam. That has to be prepared, that has to be readied by doing all of these. And what does it do? There are a couple of lines I'll read from the Tikakara. You will understand. Buddhi has to say, He manaha, kimartham tvam pishachabat pradhavasi. Why are you running around like a headless chicken? Hey mind, what are you trying to do? For whose benefit are you trying to do whatever you're trying to do? Why are we pushing the entire Sharira into doing something? I like the Kimartham Tvam Pishachavat Pradhavasi. Na tavat swaprayojanartham. It cannot be for your benefit. Hey Manas, you are pushing every action. It cannot be for your benefit. Why? Tava jadatvat prayojana sambandha anupavatehe. Hey, you are a jada vastu. What prayojanam can you get? So buddhi has to tell the manas. All this is all imaginary. Because neither the buddhi nor the manas can be addressed or can address because they are jada. But he's saying you're jada. So what benefit are you going to get by doing all this? So the benefit can't be for you. Vishayanancha kshaishnuvatvadi dosha dushtanam sambandhena prayojanam anupapattehe. Nor can it be for the objects of the senses. They are also useless. They are shaishnuvat, the shutvat. They have a dosha, they keep getting destroyed. So you can't be doing anything for them. Why are you running around? We can ask the same question of ourselves. Why are we doing what we're doing? For whose benefit are we doing this? What the question Tikakara says, manit, buddhi, should be asking the manas. We should be asking ourselves. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I trying to achieve? For whose benefit am I trying to achieve this? He goes on to say, na api chetanartham. Hey, you can't be doing it for the only chetana that is available. All you have with you is the reflected chetana. But if you say, no, I'm doing for the original chetana, that also is not valid. Already you said, trying to say that I'm doing it for my benefit is not valid. I'm doing it for the benefit of the Vishaya is not valid. For the Chetana also is not valid. Why? Tasya asangatvat. the Chetana, Brahman, is Asanga. It has nothing to do with it. And it is Paramananda Swabhavatvat. You're already Paramananda. It is Purna. What are you going to do for the Chetana? You can't do anything. There's nothing you can add. So this kind of Niyantritvam, Niyantritvena buddhihi manit uchyate. This is called manit. The buddhi which can cross-question the manas, make you think about why you're doing what you're doing. So the Tikakara writes the Tika on the Bashyam. So he's just taken that sentence from the Bashyam and written Tika on Manit. And then goes on, talks about all the rest of it also. He says, Prasangatvat, Paramananda Svabhavatvat, Cheti, Niyantratvena, Buddhihi, Manit, Tichyate. Avikalpaitraya iti Vishaya Kalpana Shunyaya Brahma Asmi iti Vishayataya eva Brahma Bhava Vyanjikaya Mahavakyotaya Buddhivritya Jnatum Shakyate iti Sambandha. The answer to that question, because Bhashyakara had said, Manasa Manana Rupena Samyak Darshanena. That's how we get the knowledge. In the Buddhi. Atma Jnatum Shakyate iti Vakya Sheshaha. Tam Atmanam Brahma Etad Ye Viduhu. The Atma is the Brahman, the Atma, Etad Ye Viduhu. That is this. Tattvamasi. So Manit is the key word according to this, because it is the Upalabdhisthana. That has to be clear. How do we control the mind? One is this kind of questions we ask. Our problems start with all kinds of. I start this whole exercise with Shraddha in the Shastra. But doubts persist. What if this is not correct? What if what the Shastra says is a little problematic? What if the Shastra talks about, this is lots of very wise people have studied the Shastra and come up with their own interpretations. And they're not small brain people, they're very, very highly intelligent people. So it is not unnatural for me to get this doubt about this Shastra itself as a pramana. What if it is wrong? What if I follow this and I don't get what I think what is promising me? I am a loser both ways. The world looks at me as a loser. I can tell you, when I went into this kind of study at one point of time, a lot of people said, you're a buddhu. You're giving up what is good for you, what's available in your hand for something which there's no guarantee about. The world will look at you as a unthinking person. So doubt can come. Doubt can come out, moksha itself. What is the end purpose? I say, listen, I have these end purpose, which I know, and I achieve it, I can feel good about it. I have an end purpose, I work towards that. Therefore, I am doing this karma for this end purpose. Why should I do something for an end purpose which is so ephemeral, so impossible to understand? Those doubts can also come. All these doubts will come in the mind. Mind is full of these things. How can the buddhi, as the manit, take charge of this? Because as long as we have this kind of problem, no nididhyasanam will work. Nididhyasanam has to work after mananam has cleared all this. The kind of thing we are going through in Advaita Makaranda. And more. That only covers some of it. Till that state comes where the doubts are cleared and what is left is only viparita bhavana. Nididhyasanam will be very difficult. It will become another dhyanam. So I have to find a way of checking, because all this is an answer to saying, how am I going to get this now? Remember that. So if I'm going to get this, the buddhi has to be operating in a certain way and taking charge of the mind, which in turn has to take charge of the indriyas. And this whole system has to work under the charge of the buddhi, of the manit. So this itself becomes an exercise in itself. Getting things ready in the mind, in the buddhi. Otherwise, all these doubts will come. I have duties to perform. Sure, we have duties to perform. When I finish all my duties, I will go and look for moksha. Wait. How do you know that you're going to be in this form available by the time you finish all your what you think as duties? I don't know. But Swamiji, it is okay, no? Even if I don't know, I will do my duties because Bhagavan and Bhagavad Gita has said, don't worry, you do your duties. Do your swadharma. It will never go waste. So maybe this janma I won't understand, next janma I won't understand, janma after that we will see. Where is the guarantee that next janma you will have the ability to even think? Next janma you may be a mosquito. Okay, this is available. This is what the Yamadharma has been telling us. Here and now in this janma. That conviction, unless that comes, our nididhyasana remains on paper. We are coming to the end of this. Yamadharma is summing everything up, upasamhara. And putting a direction in which every seeker needs to work. Not to gain limited sukha, not to gain artha, not to gain kama, not even to gain dharma, punya. So connecting this verse, Bhashakara says, Sa hanmanit katham prapyate iti tada iti sa hanmanit katham prapyate
इति तदर्थो योग उच्यते
iti tadartho yoga uchyate. How to get this status of being a manit? Hrin in the hridaya, manit. Katham prapyate. How do I gain this status of being a manit? For that end, to gain that end, is what is called yoga. Here, yoga would refer to nididhyasana. How do I do that nididhyasana successfully so that I gain that clarity of that knowledge? Because all the Shravanam I have done, all the Mananam I have done, tells me this much, that there is only one Brahman. It is Akhanda, it is Avyaya. I'm still thinking of it. And that Brahman I am. To gain that, I have to do Nididhyasanam, and that Nididhyasanam is not possible unless my buddhi becomes manied. Sa hrinmanit katham prapyate iti tadartha yoga uchyate. That is called yoga. The kind of meditation, the practice of that kind of meditation, which will give us that ability to successfully complete Nididhyasana. And the verse itself says, Yada panchavatiष्ठन्ते
यदा पंचावतिष्ठन्ते
ज्ञानानि मनसा सह
ज्ञानानि
ज्ञानानि
मनसा
मनसा
सह
सह
बुद्धिश्च न विचेष्टति
बुद्धिश्च
बुद्धिश्च
न
न
विचेष्टति
तमाहुः परमां गतिम्
तमाहुः
तमाहुः
परमां
परमां
गतिम्
गतिम्
Yada means when. When pancha avatishtate, tishtante, plural. What is pancha? The pancha is the pancha indriyas, jnanendriyas. He calls them jnanani. Again, bahuvachanam being napunsakalingaha, jnanani, along with the controller of them, which is the manas, manasasaha. When pancha avatishtate, when the senses and the mind are kept under check. Not only that, see, each one has its own play. These indriyas have a play. They interact with the indriya vishaya. They have a tendency to go toward that vishaya which it finds pleasant. That vishaya meaning that part of the vishaya. There's only one vishaya for each indriya. Therefore, it goes towards that. Even when animals travel and they sense food, they will take a diversion and go where the food is. We are no better. We are walking on the street. I can smell some nice bhaji being made somewhere. I don't know why the bhaji keeps coming again. Because a nice smell will come, that frying bhaji, you know. So instead of going straight, you take a right turn. So the smell comes from there. Why is that? Because the mind says, I like it. That bhaji smell I get is a linga for something which is very nice when I put it in my mouth. And I am going towards that because I want to eat bhaji. So the horses will go where the grass is. Unfortunately, when the mind goes, the entire Karyakram Sanghata goes. Distracted. Yada pancha avatishtante, when they don't do this, when they are settled along with the mind, because senses with themselves have nothing to do. They tell you, nice, not even nice, there is a bhaji smell. That's all they tell you. It's the mind which says, that smells nice. At the end of that, there'll be bhaji. So the mind has to go with it. Without the mind, senses have no real role other than collecting data. The mind is a sankalpa vikalpadi. Keeps jumping. So that also has to be controlled by the buddhi. Buddhi also has to remain focused on what you want, which is understanding Brahman. Buddhi can also say, don't eat that bhaji. If you go a little further down there's a fellow who's selling you fruit juice. It is much healthier for your sharira. So it takes you away from here, but it's still the same range. Buddhi is not doing a duty, but the focus is not on understanding Brahman. In Nididhyasanam, what are we doing? In Nididhyasanam, the only thing we're doing is, I've heard this during Shravanam. I have processed them, and during Mananam, I have eliminated some wrong possibilities. But I still have to understand that aparokshataya, tattvataya, as I. That is all the focus is. So, buddhi cha na vicheshtati. Vicheshtati. What is that? Original text say vicheshtati or vicheshtate? Because I think
Vicheshtati.
is Atmani pada. Should be
Vicheshtati.
I'm not sure why it says vicheshtati. Cheshta is Atmani pada. Should be therefore vicheshtate. I don't know. I'll have to check with somebody why it says vicheshtati. Buddhi cha vicheshtati tam ahuhu paramam gatim. Ahuhu, wise men say, Shastra says, they attain the ultimate, paramam gatim. So, the method is being told to us. Check indriyas, check the mind, keep the buddhi focused. Ekagrita of the buddhi, chitta naischalyam has to be maintained if nididhyasana has to work. If you do the Anvaya, it goes something like Yada Panchajnanani Manasa Saha Avatishtante. When they are settled properly, Buddhicha na vicheshtati. Then Tam Paramam Gatim Ahuhu. For what? Viparita Bhavana Nivritti. The Viparita Bhavana is very strong. What is the Viparita Bhavana? The Abhimana with the Deha. That is so strong that unless you can drop that, Nididhyasanam is going to be very difficult, if not ever going to be unsuccessful also. The whole exercise is to try and drop that individuality. This Karyakaran Sanghata this body-mind sense complex, this Sukshma Sharira and the Sthula Sharira, how do I make my buddhi recognize them as not I, as anatma? That is the only question. Viparita bhavana nivritti. That is the phalam we are looking for. Then nididhyasana becomes possible. As long as that is there, we will always look at whatever we study. Buddhi will always look at the idea of Brahman in third person. Brahmanis. So that Viparita bhavana has dropped. They say that Ramana Maharshi underwent all kinds of surgeries without anesthesia. Didn't identify with the body at all. Body is hurting, body is hurting. I am looking at it from here as a Sakshi saying body is hurting. Very tough. What in the headache you get, you keep saying, I have headache. You don't have headache. Head has ache. How do we get rid of the Viparita bhavana? Here the word jnanani is there. I simply said pancha jnanani as jnanendriyas. But literally, jnanani is what? Bahuvachanam? Napunsaklinga. So what would you read it as? Different types of knowledge. Multiple types of knowledge. But if you look at what senses do, jnanendriyas do, they also collect knowledge. At least they collect data, if not knowledge. Data has to be processed to be called information. That information has to be processed to be called knowledge. And in this processing, manas becomes important, buddhi becomes important, and memory becomes important. You process this knowledge by drawing from your own memory and become knowledge. So how do you define this jnana? So Bhashyakara has touched upon this briefly. He says, Yada
Yada
Yasmin Kale
Yasmin
Yasmin
Kale
Kale
Svavishayebhyah
Svavishayebhyah
Nivartitani
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 Atmanyeva Panchajnanani
Atmanyeva
Panchajnanani
Panchajnanani
Jnanarthatvat
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 Shotradini Indriyani Jnanani Uchyante
Shrotradini
Shrodradini Indriyani
Indriyani
Jnanani
Chite
Uchante
Avatishtante
Avatishthante
Avatishthante
Saha Manasa
Saha
Manasa
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 Yad Anugatani
Yat
Yad
Yat
Anugatani
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 Tena Sankalpadi Vyavrittenantakarnena
Tena
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 Sankalpadi
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 Vyavrittena
Vyavrittena Daha Karanena
Vyavrittena Antakarnena.
Vyavritti
Vyavrittena means then it is kept steady. Yada. Bhashyakara says, Yasmin Kale. When? When means what? When what? We are talking about getting into a state of nididhyasana. Or if you look at Ashtanga Yoga, there's a whole lot of preparation that they talk about before you go into dhyanam. You look at it that way. But Nididhyasanam requires a lot of preparatory work. When that preparatory work is ready, yasmin kale, what is the preparatory work? Sa vishayebhyaha nivartitani. Vishayebhyaha swa vishaya, by its own vishaya. From that vishaya, Panchami, swa vishayebhyaha nivartitani. They are withdrawn from their own individual vishaya. What is withdrawn? The senses. Each sense has its own vishaya. You've seen this before. When they are withdrawn from their own, that means they don't keep on reporting, there is an elephant here, there is some noise here, why is the child crying, what is cooking in the kitchen. When each sense from its own vishaya has withdrawn. Swa vishayebhyaha nivartitani. Atmani eva. We will take that word later because this is not fit here. We will do an Anvaya later. Panchajnanani. So Bhashyakara says, why is it called Jnanani? Panchajnanani. These Jnanendriyas are called Panchajnanani. This is why. Jnanarthatvat Shotradini Indriyani Jnanani Tyuchyate. Why they Jnanarthatvat? These being the instrument, the karana for various jnana. What are the different types of knowledge that we can get? Therefore, this jnana indriya are called jnanani. They are not different types of knowledge. They are the instruments for the different types of knowledge. Jnanarthatvat. Like what? Shotradini. Shotra adini. Like we have for Shrotra, sound, knowledge of sound. Indriyani, jnanani uchyante. These indriyani are therefore called jnanani. So he just makes it clear, that's all. I think otherwise instinctively also we know, intuitively we know that when you say jnanani, we're talking about jnana indriyani. When they are avatishtante, they remain steady, they abide in very quietly, withdrawn from their own vishaya. See, other vishaya doesn't matter. As far as the eye is concerned, if there's noise outside, it doesn't make any difference. Eye is withdrawn from form and color. Ears are withdrawn from all noise, all sounds. No differentiating between what is pleasant sound and what is unpleasant sound. What is cacophony and what is music. When they're in that kind of situation, and that has to be along with the mind. Mind has to, I said, not differentiate between music and cacophony. Who decides? Manas. I don't want to listen to that. I want to listen to this. Now, depending upon who you are, what kind of person you are, you may want to listen to classical music. Your son or grandson may want to listen to, I don't know, heavy metal or something like that. Bang, bang, boom, boom. So it depends, changes. But from all of them, manasa saha avatishtante. They're withdrawn from their own individual vishayas and they stay steady at the level of the indriyas. How do they do it? Because the mind tells them. Mind is the controller for these things. Yat anugatani manasa saha anugatani. They go along with the mind. mind, if the mind can say, don't worry whether it is pleasant sound or unpleasant sound, stay away. Mind will never normally say that, right? Mind will work on the basis of, I like that sound, I don't like that sound. But if the mind can do that, yat anugatani tena sankalpadi vyavrittena antakaranena. When the mind is itself stops vacillating, when the mind doesn't push the whole system to go towards a particular sense object because that is pleasant, and away from a sense object which is not pleasant, then sankalpadi vyavrittena, having become steady with this kind of sankalpa vikalpa, antakaranena, the antakarana, which is the mind, which is steady, which is not vacillating, and the buddhi also remains unchanging. Buddhi is also, like I said, can take a decision. Buddhi is a nishyatmika. Buddhischa
Buddhischa
adhyavasaya lakshana
अध्यवसाय लक्षणा
na vicheshtati.
na
न
vicheshtati
विचेष्टति
Here also it says vicheshtati. Svavyapareshu
स्वव्यापारेषु
svavyapareshu
na vicheshtate
na
न विचेष्टते
vicheshtati
na vyapriyate
न
na
व्याप्रियते
vyapriyate
tamahoho
tamahu
तमहुः
paramam gatim.
परमां गतिम्
When the buddhi remains steady in the thought that has been planted in it during Shravana, not engaging in all other decision-making processes. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I take early retirement? Should I go after that? Should I not do it? That decision-making, it is not engaged in during the nididhyasanam. Na vyapriyate, does not do vyavahara. In that state, it is possible tam ahuhu paramangatim. One is the highest state of absorption, ready for moksha jnanam. Nididhyasana is not moksha. Nididhyasa can lead to moksha. We will see how in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you, everybody.